Entry log galactic date 4272.8. Recording status personal notes. Subject human behavioral study. Author Dr. Krell Voss, senior xenobiologist. Let me start by saying that I, Dr. Krell Voss, have been monumentally wrong about humans. Spectacularly, embarrassingly, and quite possibly dangerously wrong. Oh, how I remember my first day at the Galactic Research Station when they announced we'd be hosting a human ambassador. I actually laughed a rather undignified rattling of my throat plates that earned me several disapproving glances from my colleagues. But really, can you blame me? Here we were, the premier xenobiological research facility in the Orion Arm, about to host what appeared to be the galaxy's most unimpressive bipedal species. They don't even have natural armor, I remember snorting to my research partner, Dr. Nax. Their skin is practically tissue paper, and they have exposed water-based eyes. Water-based. Do you know how easily those can be damaged? Dr. Nax, ever the voice of reason, simply flicked her sensory tendrils in that annoyingly knowing way of hers and said, "Perhaps you should reserve judgment, Krell. The Council didn't grant them Level 3 civilization status for nothing." But did I listen? Of course not. I was too busy cataloguing their apparent weaknesses: no claws, no venom, minimal muscle density compared to Regalians, laughably poor night vision compared to the Centaurians, and absolutely no biological redundancy systems. One heart. Who evolves with just one heart? Then Ambassador Sarah Chen arrived at our station. I'll never forget that first meeting. She walked, on just two legs into our primary reception chamber, wearing what appeared to be deliberately restrictive clothing, humans call it a suit, and smiled with those flat, herbivore-like teeth. The sight almost triggered my sympathy response, the one we reserve for particularly helpless creatures. "Dr. Voss," she exclaimed, extending one of her five-fingered appendages toward me. "I've read your papers on convergent evolution in carbon-based life forms. Fascinating stuff." I reluctantly extended my primary manipulator to perform their traditional handshake greeting, being extremely careful not to apply any pressure. Their bones seemed so breakable. "Ambassador Chen, welcome to Research Station Gamma 9. I trust your journey was comfortable." She laughed a sound that reminded me of young Azurian hatchlings and said, "Oh, it was fine. Though I have to admit I missed real Earth food." Speaking of which, she gave what I now recognize as a sly smile. "I hope you'll be joining us for the diplomatic dinner tonight. I brought some traditional human dishes to share." That's when Dr. Nax, that traitor, chimed in. "Dr. Voss would be delighted. He's been very interested in human biological functions." And that, dear diary, is how I found myself committed to attending what would become the most perspective-altering dinner of my entire scientific career. If only I'd known then what I know now, I might have called in sick. But no, there I was, preparing to attend what I assumed would be a quaint demonstration of how these soft, fragile creatures sustained themselves. How wrong I was. How monumentally, catastrophically wrong. End log entry. Note to self: must remember to add more detail about the human's peculiar habit of expressing amusement at regular intervals. Their laughter seems to serve multiple social functions, including, I suspect, disarming their prey. Entry log galactic date 4272.8 continued. Recording status personal notes. Subject human behavioral study diplomatic dinner observations. Author Dr. Krell Voss, senior xenobiologist. The diplomatic dinner started exactly as I expected, which is to say, completely chaotic. Ambassador Chen had requested our largest observation chamber be converted into what humans call a dining room. The station's environmental controls were adjusted to human comfortable levels, which meant most of us had to activate our thermal regulators. Watching her move comfortably in what we considered near freezing temperatures should have been my first clue. Around the massive composite table sat representatives from 12 different species. There was High Commander Zix of the Arcturus Alliance, his crystalline form refracting light across the walls. Next to him, Ambassador Prell from Sirius Beta tried desperately to keep her photosynthetic fronds from drooping in the dim lighting apparently humans prefer to eat in what they call atmospheric conditions. Hey. As if reducing visual acuity somehow enhances the consumption process. "I hope everyone's ready for a true Earth experience," Ambassador Chen announced, standing at the head of the table with that ever-present smile. We'll be serving several courses tonight, each representing different aspects of human cuisine. Dr. Nax, seated beside me, vibrated with excitement. I've been studying human nutritional documents, she whispered. Did you know they consume items from all three primary biological kingdoms, sometimes in the same meal? I was about to respond with appropriate scientific disdain when the first course arrived. The serving drones specially programmed for this event placed small plates before each guest. On each plate sat what appeared to be the corpse of a marine creature, carefully arranged with various plant materials. This is what we call sushi, Ambassador Chen explained, picking up two small sticks. Traditional Japanese cuisine. You'll notice we're using chopsticks, one of humanity's oldest eating tools. I watched in fascination as she manipulated these primitive implements with remarkable dexterity. Several of my colleagues attempted to follow suit, resulting in what I can only describe as a massacre of dignity. High Commander Zix managed to snap 3 pairs before Ambassador Chen gently suggested he use his natural crystals instead. The fish is raw? Asked Professor Yiril, her bioluminescent spots flashing with concern. There appears to be no application of heat or chemical preparation. Completely raw, Ambassador Chen confirmed cheerfully. Well, except for the rice. We do cook that. The casual way she announced their consumption of unprocessed flesh sent a slight tremor through my secondary nervous system. But that was nothing compared to what came next. Several of my colleagues politely declined the sushi, citing biological incompatibility. I noticed, however, that Ambassador Chen showed no signs of disappointment. In fact, her smile grew slightly wider as she gestured to the serving drones for the next course. Don't worry if this isn't to your taste, she said, with what I now recognize as anticipation in her voice. The main course is something I think you'll find fascinating. The way she emphasized that last word should have triggered every survival instinct in my body. But I, fool that I was, simply sat there, still convinced I was observing a delightfully primitive species sharing their quaint cultural practices. I had no idea I was about to witness something that would fundamentally change our understanding of human classification in the galactic database. Emergency alert notification, environmental controls detecting unusual temperature fluctuations. Checking systems. Oh, apologies for the interruption in my log. Apparently the environmental controls are still adapting to what happened next. Even the station's AI seems disturbed by the memory. End log entry segment. Note to self: must research human facial expressions more thoroughly. That smile may require reclassification as a warning display. Entry log: galactic date 4272.8 continued. Recording status: personal notes. Subject: human behavioral study, the incident. Author: Dr. Krell Voss, senior xenobiologist. The serving drones returned with what Ambassador Chen called the centerpiece of our meal. Each plate contained what appeared to be, no, what definitely was, a massive bone. Not a replica, not a protein substitute, but an actual skeletal remain from what must have been a substantial creature. The bone had been, and I still shudder to write this, cut lengthwise to expose its interior. The marrow within glistened under our observation chamber's lights, and I swear by all scientific principles, Ambassador Chen's pupils dilated at the sight. Roasted bone marrow with garlic and herbs, she announced proudly. A delicacy on Earth. We've been preparing these since before we had written language. Professor Yiril's bioluminescence dimmed to nearly nothing. You consume the internal structural support systems of other creatures. Oh yes, Ambassador Chen replied with disturbing enthusiasm. But the real treat isn't the bone itself, it's what's inside. Watch. What happened next will forever be seared into my memory banks. The human picked up what she called a tiny fork, though it looked more like a primitive extraction tool, and began to scoop out the fatty tissue from within the bone. The way she did it. So casual, so practiced. Like a Vanaxian acid spider dissolving its prey. You see, she continued, spreading the marrow on what she called toast. Apparently they also burned their plant matter on purpose. Our ancestors learned to break open bones for marrow during times of scarcity. It's packed with nutrients. Dr. Nax, that eternally curious fool, actually leaned forward. Your species learned this behavior for survival. Ambassador Chen laughed, that same laugh I had previously compared to Azurian hatchlings, but now it seemed more like the call of a proximal hooked beast. Originally, yes, but then we discovered it was delicious. Here, would anyone like to try? The silence in the room was broken only by the soft scraping sound of her extraction tool against bone. I watched in horrified fascination as she consumed bite after bite, clearly savoring each mouthful of what was essentially the liquefied interior of another organism's structural system. You know what's really interesting, she continued, either oblivious to or more terrifyingly enjoying our collective discomfort. Some anthropologists believe this practice helped develop our brains. All that fatty tissue, you see. Though personally, she grinned, displaying those deceptively flat teeth, I just think it's tasty. That's when High Commander Zix made what I consider to be the most unfortunate comment of the evening. But you are such a peaceful species, he said, his crystalline form vibrating with confusion. Ambassador Chen's response chilled my circulatory fluid. She delicately wiped her mouth with a cloth, a gesture I now recognize as purely theatrical, looked directly at the commander, and said, "Oh, we are. Now. These days we prefer to cook our food and use utensils. Much more civilized than the old ways." The old ways, I heard myself ask, even as every scientific instinct screamed at me to stop. She nodded, casually breaking off a piece of the bone with her bare hands, an act that demonstrated a strength I hadn't previously attributed to their species. Before tools, we used to just chase our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Persistence hunting, we call it. Then we'd use rocks to break open the bones. Very messy. Thank goodness for civilization, right? She laughed again, and this time, not a single being in the room joined her. System alert: 3 guests have requested immediate departure from the observation chamber. Request granted. I remained seated, partially out of scientific duty, but mostly because my locomotion system seemed to have temporarily frozen. As I watched her finish the marrow with evident satisfaction, a terrible thought occurred to me: how many other supposedly primitive human behaviors were we misinterpreting? End log entry segment. Note to self: update station security protocols, and perhaps reconsider my previous dismissal of human horror stories as mere fiction. Entry log: galactic date 4272.9. Recording status: personal notes, urgent update. Subject: human historical research findings. Author: Dr. Krell Voss, senior xenobiologist. I haven't slept since the dinner incident. How could I? Every time I close my sensory organs, I see Ambassador Chen breaking open that bone with the casual efficiency of a Titan crawler cracking a space hull. But that's not the worst part. Oh no, the worst part is what I discovered during my subsequent research binge. You see, after the dinner and after 3 of my colleagues filed formal requests for immediate transfer to other research stations, I decided to dive deeper into human historical records. They're remarkably open about their past, which I now realize might be another warning sign we all missed. Computer, I had said, my appendages still shaking slightly, access Earth historical database. Focus on early human hunting practices. What came next? By all that's scientific, I wish I could unknow what I learned. Did you know that early humans didn't even bother with weapons for many of their hunts? They simply walked. They walked after their prey. Hour after hour, day after day, matching the target's pace with those ridiculous bipedal legs of theirs. They couldn't outrun their prey, oh no, that would be too merciful. Instead, they followed it until the creature's own biology betrayed it. Most species on their planet, you see, cool themselves through short, intense bursts of activity, something called panting, but humans sweat. They just keep cooling themselves indefinitely, like some sort of organic, perpetual motion machine. Personal note: must remember to submit a formal request to reclassify human sweating from biological inefficiency to predatory adaptation in the xenobiology database. The prey would run, rest, pant, run again, a normal, sensible response to being chased. But the humans just kept coming. Walking, tracking, following, until their target literally collapsed from heat exhaustion. And then, they would do what Ambassador Chen so casually demonstrated at dinner: they would break open the bones to access the nutrient-rich marrow inside. But surely, I hear you say, this was just a primitive survival technique. That's what I thought too. Until I found references to something humans call ultramarathons even now, For fun, they run distances that would exhaust most sentient species. For entertainment, they persist long past the point where any reasonable being would stop. I found footage of these marathons, hundreds of humans, moving for hours, sweating, grinning those unsettling grins. Some of them even do this in extreme heat or cold, across mountains or deserts. They call it a hobby. The more I researched, the worse it got. Their hunting techniques evolved, but that underlying persistence remained. They developed ranged weapons, but instead of using them for quick kills, they often employed a strategy called bleeding tracking, hitting their prey with small projectiles and then, you guessed it, following it, sometimes for days. Emergency alert heart rate elevated. Automatic calming protocols initiated. Sorry about that. Where was I? Ah, yes, the historical records. Here's something particularly disturbing. They passed these traits to their artificial creations. Have you seen their robots? Their AIs? That same relentless persistence, that drive to continue until the goal is achieved. I'm beginning to understand why Ambassador Chen found our initial dismissal of humanity so amusing. We looked at their lack of claws and assumed weakness. We noticed their dull teeth and categorized them as non-threatening. We observed their soft skin and classified them as prey species. What absolute fools we were. End log entry. Note to self-check: if anyone has studied human cooking shows, there's something disturbing about how they combine their predatory history with entertainment. Additional note: must investigate why they call their planet's apex aquatic predator a killer whale, but refer to themselves as kind and nice. Suspect linguistic misdirection. Entry log: galactic date 4272.9 continued. Recording status: personal notes, revelatory analysis. Subject: human behavioral patterns, new understanding. Author: Dr. Krell Voss, senior xenobiologist. The more I observe humans now, the more I understand how completely we misinterpreted their behavior patterns. Take Ambassador Chen's diplomatic politeness, for instance. We thought it was submissive behavior, ha. No. What we're seeing is restraint. This morning I watched her in the station's physical conditioning chamber. Do you know what humans call their exercise routines? Grinding, pushing through the pain, no gain. They voluntarily put themselves through physical stress to become stronger. Who does that? But here's what really keeps my cooling system working overtime: their technological development path. We assumed they focused on comfort technologies because they were soft. Wrong again. Let me explain what I've realized. Take their spaceships. We mocked them for adding what we thought were unnecessary safety features and backup systems. How fragile these humans must be, we thought, to need so many redundancies, but now I understand they didn't add these features because they're afraid of dying. They added them because they intend to go places that might kill them. Warning: blood pressure elevated. Administering calming agents. Yesterday I made the mistake of asking Ambassador Chen about human space exploration goals. Oh, you know, she said with that predatory smile. The usual stuff. Other galaxies, maybe some alternate dimensions. Wherever we can reach. Wherever they can reach. Do you understand what this means? They're not just persistent hunters on their world, they want to persist across the entire universe. They call space the final frontier, and now I know what happens to frontiers when humans find them. I've started noticing other things too. Their entertainment? Full of stories about overcoming impossible odds. Their music? Often focuses on never giving up. Their common phrases? Where there's a will, there's a way. Winners never quit, just keep swimming. That last one is particularly terrifying given their limited aquatic capabilities. Even their scientific method is based on relentless pursuit. They don't just accept failure, they categorize it as interesting data and try again. Ambassador Chen came to my lab today. She wanted to discuss potential joint research projects. She said, and I quote, "We could really hunt down some answers together." Hunt down answers. They use predatory language for intellectual pursuits. How did we not see this before? System alert: subject heart rate irregular. Recommended break from research. But I can't take a break. Don't you see? The humans certainly wouldn't. They'd just keep going, keep pushing, keep hunting down those answers until... Oh. She's standing in my doorway right now. Smiling. Always smiling. Dr. Voss, she's saying. I brought you some coffee. You seem tired, and this always helps me push through long research sessions. They even have a beverage specifically designed to help them persist longer. End log entry. Note to self: research human phrase coffee is life suspicious correlation between stimulant dependency and predatory behavior patterns. Additional note: why do they call their physical training facilities gyms, but their combat training recreational sports? More linguistic misdirection suspected. Entry log: galactic date 4272.9, final entry. Recording status: personal notes, critical update. Subject: human integration analysis, final conclusions. Author: Dr. Krell Voss, senior xenobiologist. Several weeks have passed since the bone marrow incident, and I've come to some disturbing conclusions about our new galactic neighbors. But first, let me tell you about last night's follow-up dinner. Yes, against all better judgment, I accepted another dinner invitation from Ambassador Chen. You seem so interested in human cuisine, she said. I thought you might enjoy learning more. That should have been my cue to flee to the outer rim. But no, in true scientific spirit, I persisted. Oh stars, I'm even starting to use their terminology. This time it was just three of us: myself, Dr. Nax, still insufferably curious, and Ambassador Chen. She prepared something called a barber cooking method that involves deliberately burning animal flesh over open flame while basting it with sweet sauces to lock in the flavors. You know what's fascinating about barbecue, she said, turning the meat with metal tools. It's one of humanity's oldest cooking techniques. Some scientists think the smell of cooking meat helped bring our early tribes together. Dr. Nax, who has apparently lost all survival instincts, asked, so it's a community activity? Oh yes, Ambassador Chen beamed. Nothing brings humans together like a good barbecue. Well, except maybe a worthy challenge or a common enemy. She laughed. We didn't. But here's the truly terrifying part: I'm starting to understand their humor. More than that, I'm starting to understand them. And that understanding has led me to a conclusion that I must share, regardless of the consequences to my career or sanity. We've been classifying humans completely wrong. They're not just persistence predators. They're not just endurance hunters. There's something far more terrifying. They're adaptive persistence predators. They don't just chase until they catch you, they study you, learn about you, and then use that knowledge to chase you more efficiently. Look at their history. They started as pursuit predators, evolved into tool users, developed ranged weapons, created vast agricultural systems. They persistently hunted plants until they became food, and then turned their hunting instincts toward abstract concepts like scientific knowledge and technological advancement. Alert detection of increased respiratory rate, implementing breathing exercises. But wait, it gets worse. Remember how I mentioned they're adaptive? Well, guess what they do when they encounter a new species that's stronger, faster, or more dangerous than they are? They don't give up. They don't back down. No, they get excited. Oh wow, they say. Look at those natural defenses. How fascinating. I wonder if we could learn from that. And then they do. They learn. They adapt. They improve. Last night, as Ambassador Chen was serving dessert, they even persist through multiple courses. She said something that made everything click. She was telling us about human space exploration. And she said, you know what's really exciting about meeting new species? There's so much we can learn from each other. That's when I realized they don't just want to hunt. They don't just want to persist. They want to understand. And somehow that's even more terrifying. Because now I know the truth: everything humans do, from their scientific research to their diplomatic missions, is just an extension of their hunting patterns. They're not trying to dominate the galaxy. They're trying to befriend it. They want to learn from every species they meet, adapt those lessons to their own capabilities, and then, urgent alert, unexpected visitor at door. Oh no. Ambassador Chen is here again. She's holding something, it looks like. No, it's a cookbook. She's smiling that smile again. Dr. Voss, I just found this amazing recipe for roasted bone marrow with garlic and herb butter. I thought maybe you'd like to learn how to prepare it yourself? After all, sharing knowledge is what friends are for. End final log entry. Note to self: must update galactic classification system immediately. Suggested new category for humans-friendly apex predators, extreme caution. Additional note, they don't just want to hunt the galaxy. They want to teach the galaxy to hunt with them. Evolution grant to us mercy.